Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm your host D-Day, bringing you today's episode, which is my backstory on how I got started with Warhammer 40,000 back when I was 10 years old. So just making doubly sure that you understand what this video is about, I'm going to be talking about the figures that I collected back when I was 10, back in 1994. These are 2nd edition Tyranids. But before we get started, let me remind you guys to like the video if you enjoy content like this, and consider leaving a comment down below. When did you guys get into Warhammer 40,000? What army did you collect? Or is this something you're interested in seeing more about? And a little teaser on the next couple of episodes that are be coming out. I left a sneaky surprise in the channel trailer for this year, and I'm curious, did you guys figure out what it was? Here I have a bigger reveal for it. It is not quite done yet, but 3/4 of the way done, and it's going to cost me a lot less than the retail price of like $515. Plus, it's out of stock. Honestly, I have no intention of trying to trick anyone or joining any major competitions. Even with this guy, I would probably lose. All of my knowledge is from 2nd edition, so I wouldn't even have a chance, even if I had the perfect army. This I'm just making because a $500 miniature is just, I can't justify that, to tell you guys the truth. Like, I'm going to school to make money, not to drop $500 on a miniature, right? Even though I do love the Tyranids, and even though in the future that might be a possibility. Because let's face it, if you look at my long history of Path of Exile, I spent more than $500 on MTX there. But that's a different story because I'm getting supporter packs, I'm supporting the game is free. It's a cycle. You know, you guys know. If you know Path of Exile, if you know Grinding Gears games, they have a pay it forward system where they give you everything for free, and if you want to support them, you can. And they give you extra points and extra MTX. But it is kind of FOMO, kind of gambling if you think about it in a way, because once those supporter packs are removed and new supporter packs come out, the old supporter packs are no longer available, so they're just gone forever. And you guys know that I like using the points for mystery boxes, which, you know, those are MTX that are cheaper, but it's gambling. Let's face it, it's gambling. But I do really appreciate the way Grinding Gear Games is now not giving you duplicates, so if you've pulled it, it won't be in the loot table. But I'm getting totally off track. We're not talking about Path of Exile. This is going to be a video of me just talking about one of my loves from when I was a kid, the Tyranids, specifically. So this is actually pretty fond to my heart. I have my 2nd edition codex back from when I was 10 years old. It even still has the price of how much it cost back then on the bottom. And if you notice, I got the t-shirt, this is brand new, from the Warhammer store. It is the 2nd edition codex on a t-shirt, which is pretty cool. So putting the codex off to the side, one of the things that I invested in, I got this for Christmas, is the new 10th edition Tyranids codex. It looks sweet. What's really awesome, what I like, is in the very back, it has a code that lets you unlock all of the rules on the app, and I don't need to hide this because I've already redeemed it. So if you're thinking about writing it down and trying it out, it's not going to work. I already used it. But these codexes, they're really cool because the Tyranids, they don't have story from first person. It's all third person. So it's other armies talking about the Tyranids. That's what is inside the codexes. You have no first person stories of the Tyranids talking about their history. It's just other people who were affected by the Tyranids. Growing up, I loved the movie Alien with the xenomorph. I've always been really interested in how organisms can adapt to their environment, and I've always had a soft spot for the xenomorph, it being the perfect organism, perfectly adapted to its environment. So of course, Tyranids. That is everything that the Tyranids is about. It's about moving somewhere, consuming everything, and perfecting their adaptations, which I think is pretty cool. Oh, and one funny thing that I wanted to show you guys is I still have my catalog from back when I was a kid. Look at the date on this thing. It is the 1997 catalog, and it has like all of the individual pewter figures that you can order. I used to flip through this and just dream of which ones I could have. And of course, I could not paint like this at all. I was not that good at 10. I'm still not that good at 40. So please don't hate. I'll show you guys the figures that I do have from 10th edition. My color scheme was black and white, which tells you a lot about my personality back when I was a kid. So if you saw over here on this side of the cabinets, I freed up some Funko space to make room for some Warhammer 40,000 things. And one of the boxes I want to show off is my original box of termagants that I got when I was a little kid. You see the 90s marketing is so vibrant. I love it. And like I said, don't judge me too hard. I'll put this on the little turntable and spin it for you guys and talk about it. But yeah, my color scheme was black and white, and my favorite color back then was green, so I had an accent of green. So this little guy is a termagant from 1994, when I first started playing this. Between 1994 and 1999 is when I played a lot of my Warhammer 40,000. I picked the army of the Tyranids, and my best friend at the time, he was from Norway, so he picked the Space Wolves. I like that my color scheme was black and white. This was the extent of my dry brushing capabilities. Very cool. So I do have the 3 pewter figures, which were the big boys back when I was a kid. These guys were so expensive. I have the metal version of the Hive Tyrant. And I don't really remember exactly where I got this guy, because I definitely did not glue the weapons and everything on myself. As you can see, unfortunately, the whip broke off. And for some weird reason, I think I bought this from someone else, and they decided to put the barbed strangler on the Hive Tyrant, which we all know that the Venom cannon has always been king. But just like the other ones, this was the extent of my painting abilities when I was 10. I primered the entire model black, and then I dry brushed it with white, and then I painted all of the chitin white, and then I did a green highlight to add a little bit of color to it. Very funny. Back when I was a kid, I don't think I fully understood the rules. They were very difficult to understand. And I remember as a kid, back then, the lictor was invisible. So me and my best friend, we would just trust each other. I would move the lictor around on the battlefield, but he wouldn't actually be on the battlefield. I would just remember where he was, and then in my head I would pretend to where he moved, and then when he attacked, I'd be like, okay, now he's here and he's attacking. But the lictor was really fun. He caused a lot of grief for my friend from Norway. I'm pretty sure that we didn't know the rules properly, so that was not the way you're supposed to play with the lictor. Now in 10th edition, it's a lot cooler. I do like that the rules make it so that you can't do ranged weapons on him unless you're within a certain distance. I think that's pretty cool. I just really liked using an invisible model and then popping it out to pretend like he's got a chameleon ability that lets him blend in perfectly. Kind of like the Predators back when I was watching my Alien movies. The camouflage that Predators had, I kind of pretended to have that. Very cool. So the lictor. And of course, my favorite unit, I have the OG Carnifex. I lost one of his arms, and I have no idea how to replace it. It's a real bummer, because I love this guy. He caused so much grief against the Space Wolves. I destroyed so many tanks with this guy. Again, probably playing the rules wrong, but whenever we rolled for wounds for the carnifex. I rolled 2 dice, and they had to be snake eyes for this guy to actually have damage dealt. But same thing. It is completely primed black, dry brushed white. The armor pieces were painted white, and then green highlights were added just to add a little bit of color to this guy. I love the OG Carnifex. I think it's pretty cool that for 10th edition, the Screamer Killer came out, a kind of a throwback to it. Don't really like the pose that the Screamer Killer is in, but it looks pretty cool. I like it. And if you guys know where I can get a replacement pewter arm for this guy, I will love you forever, because I'm about to start calling this guy Old 3 Arms. This guy here is a little weird. I think I bought this guy in high school in 1999, right before I put all of my things away and I stopped playing. I think it's mainly because my friend from Norway, he moved away, so I no longer had anyone to play. We only had one Games Workshop back then, and it was really far away. And back then, I don't know why, but I didn't travel very far away from home. I've never really liked driving, so that might have been a deterrent as well. But it is one of the different models of the Tyranid warriors, and this one's holding a venom cannon. And this is one of the few Tyranid warriors where I actually like this model better than the current models. I like that the venom cannon is in the upper arms, and that the lower 2 arms are the rending claws for close combat. To me, it makes a lot more sense for the main hand weapons to be up top, because the way I posed this venom cannon, it looks like he's actually holding up the venom cannon, staring down the barrel, and ready to fire. So this pose, I think, is a lot cooler. The other Tyranid warriors with the venom cannons, it's so long and awkward, and if you glue it in the bottom, it never really points where you want it to. It's always like off to the side. So I would say 10 years old to about 17 years old. So 1994 to 1999. Other than that, those were all of the units. The termagants, the hive tyrant, the lictor, the carnifex, the Tyranid warrior with the venom cannon, and then what I like to call my 1 unit of 3 Tyranid warriors with bone swords. These guys are my battle turkeys. So this is the OG 1994, 1995-ish Tyranid warriors. And back then, I don't remember really, but I think they only came with bone swords or death spitters. So if you wanted to get the special weapons like the barbed stranglers or the venom cannons, you had to buy the separate pewter model, which looks completely different from these guys. This box had 3 Tyranid warriors in it, and I believe 6 bone swords and 3 death spitters, and that's it. Also, they had square bases back then, which I kind of liked, because it gave you an opportunity to like pose them in ways where the bases touch and it looks like they're moving as a unit. So, I mean, I think that's pretty cool. Like, that's one thing I miss about square bases, is being able to move them as a big square unit. Now everything is on a round base. Alright, so this is a pretty big box. I never bought the 2nd edition of Warhammer 40,000. I didn't get it for Christmas or for my birthday. I was probably wishing for a Sega Genesis. But once I hit high school, I ended up buying, I believe this is 3rd edition, correct me if I'm wrong. I bought the 3rd edition box just so that I could get the rule books and everything inside. And with that, I also bought this guy. It was the Tyranid Battle Force, so I really love the artwork on it. This one came with hormagaunts, termagants, gene stealers, and 1 more group of Tyranid warriors. So what's really weird is I cannot find any of the Tyranid termagants that I got. I believe they're 3rd edition, because they look a little bit different. They're more streamlined. They're a little bit bigger. This guy is a little bit special. The box of the Tyranid warriors had 6 heads on them, so I decided to glue the 3 extra heads onto my termagants and my hormagaunts, because back then you could give them an adaptation which would allow one of the smaller units to be a synapse creature and give the unit or everything around it synapse. So I thought it would be pretty cool to have one termagant inside each squad to be able to give the entire squad synapse. I don't really know if we were playing it the right way, but from what I remember is any Tyranid model that fell out of synapse range became a feral creature, and you had to roll dice to see if it would actually do what you wanted it to do. So this little guy, I decided to glue the Tyranid warrior head on him to make him look like he's got a bigger brain and he can be synapsed. But for some weird reason, this is the only termagant that I can find. All of my other termagants are gone. I feel like I did a better job on the paint job on this guy, though. Black with white dry brushing, white shell, and I did a little bit more effort on the green highlighting on this one. I'm pretty proud of this guy. It's probably because I was a little bit older by then. This is like really close to when I stopped playing. Like, I got all of these figures. Some of them I didn't even paint. Like, I didn't touch any of my hormagaunts. I didn't paint any of them. They were unpainted for 20 years, actually. So I also have a whole bunch of these gene stealers. So what's really cool about these gene stealers, I have 2 different kinds. I believe they're exactly the same molds, but the ones I purposefully left the base uncovered. The black base ones with the gray bottoms, these are the ones that were in the Tyranid battle force. And these ones that have the blue sides and the blue bottoms, these are the gene stealers that I bought from my friend from Norway when he got Space Hulk. He kept all of the Terminators, and I bought all of the gene stealers from him. So the blue base ones, these ones are special to me. But as you can see, this is the new paint scheme that I'm going with now. I really like the contrast between like a blue-green and a solid green, and then dry brushing it. Instead of white, I dry brush them with mint, and all of the soft bits like the tongue and in between the carapaces, I went with yellow. And instead of going black on claws, I wanted it to look more earthy, more woodsy, so I went with a brown for the claws. These guys, this is me trying to get back into painting. I'm realizing that painting makes me feel a lot calmer, a lot better. I'm still learning. I know these probably look like complete trash to you guys, but I'm still trying to figure out what color scheme I like best. So like I said, I had a whole bunch of hormagaunts in this Tyranid battle force, and for whatever reason, I really didn't want to deal with any of the hormagaunts. So I glued them all together, but they were all unpainted, not even primed. They were just a big clump of hormagaunt models. But this is the scheme that I'm going with. I think these came out a little bit better because the Gene Stealers, some of them had paint. The ones from Space Hulk, I tried to paint them in purple and blues like the Gene Stealers are supposed to look. The other ones, they were black and white, but I did my best to clean them and then repaint them because I want Gene Stealers in my army. These guys were completely unpainted, so I did fresh primer on these and I used contrast paints on these. So here I have 2 hormagaunts next to each other. The one with the big head, of course, is one of the Tyranid warrior heads. I did glue it on here because I was expecting the adaptation to be required for a squad of hormagaunts as well. I believe I had 1 squad of termagants, 2 squads of hormagaunts. So 2 hormagaunts have the big heads, 1 termagant has the big head. And they were going to run with their crew and give everyone synapse because of the big brain on the inside. But I did the same thing with these guys. I primered them white, and then I used 3 contrast paints. So for the chitin, I used Aldari Emerald. For the body, I used striking scorpion. And for all of the sharp bits, the bits that are going to deal damage, I used wildwood. Then I did a really light dry brush of Gauss Blaster Green, so it's like a minty color, on everything except for the wildwood. On the wildwood, I did a dry brush of Cadian Flesh Tone. So it's kind of tying in that I wanted them to look like wood, the weapons, you know, so that they can blend in with jungle terrain, but also a flesh tone as a highlight because it's not made out of wood, it's a bone. So there's going to be a really thin layer of membrane over the bone until it starts hacking into some Imperial Guard, right? So termagants, hormagaunts, gene stealers, and I have another squad of the Tyranid warriors. This by far, I love this model. I love the rending claws on these guys because they have, 4 fingers? They're really long nails. I think that's really cool. For melee warriors, this is what I would prefer. Instead of bone swords, rending claws on the bottom, scythe on the top. It's pretty cool. So these two guys, I did these guys as melee warriors because back then you didn't have to make an all melee squad. You didn't have to make an all ranged squad. Every upgrade, you could say, cost a certain amount of extra points. So switching out the rending claws for a venom cannon is a good idea, but it does cost more points, and you can only have one venom cannon per unit. So of course I have one of the metal venom cannons, which was supposed to go into that squad to replace one of the bone swords. So I have 2 bone swords and 1 venom cannon for the metal ones. And then one of my 3 Tyranid warriors, I gave him a venom cannon. So 2 of them are melee, 1 of them has the venom cannon. That's how I distributed my points back then. But as you can see, this is what I was talking about earlier. The venom cannon is really, really big. It has to be pushed over to the side. So even though he looks pretty menacing, he is holding a venom cannon. It looks like he's about to attack with the claws instead of the gun. I do really like the ability to point and aim with the gun. So if I could successfully take this guy apart, I don't think I can. It'll probably snap into a million pieces. I would really like to put the melee hands on the bottom row and put the gun on the top row so that it looks more like it's the Tyranid warrior staring down the barrel. Also, I'm noticing I did not do the dry brushing or the accent colors on the venom cannon. So shame on me. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how I want my color scheme to be because I've already changed this up again. But I won't go into what I changed it up again. More or less, I just added more yellow into it to see how that would look. But that was the entire kit that I ended up getting back in high school. And it's sad because I bought this I bought the game, I bought the box, and I bought one more thing. I bought the 3rd edition Hive Tyrant to replace my 2nd edition Hive Tyrant. So this one's metal, and I can't show this one off, guys. I'm so sorry. I did something really goofy. I got a Warhammer, I believe, Wood Elf dragon, a green dragon, and I modified it by like sawing the head off and gluing the upper body to it so that my Hive Tyrant could have wings. Because back then, there were no wing attachments for Hive Tyrants, but there was an upgrade where you could give the Hive Tyrant wings. So I glued him to a goofy looking Warhammer miniature, which I really shouldn't have broke it. It's probably worth a lot of money now. It was a really cool dragon, really big snake looking dragon, but I attached the upper body to that guy. I did 4 scything claws to make him cheaper, but I gave him wings so he could fly further. So I have the box, and I can't show the figure because it broke into a million pieces. I'll probably make an episode of me doing my best to rebuild this guy, but as a walkrant, not as a flyrant. Also, I don't think I have the venom cannon anymore. I think I only have the 4 scything claws. I don't know why I don't have all of my boxes from 40K. I grew up as a kid that kept my boxes. Like, I was a collector as a child. 10 years old, oh, I need to keep the box. I wasn't the type to rip into it and throw it away. I don't know where I put the extra bits to this guy. It's the extra bits, and some of the boxes are missing. And all of my termagants. Where are my termagants? I have no idea. But what kind of sucks is I bought all 3 of those boxes, and I bought the metal biovore. Look at how tiny this guy is. Teeny tiny. I like this biovore more than the new biovore. The new biovore looks like too much of a bug to me. So here is one confession from me. I know they're space bugs. I know they have a hive mind like bugs. Everybody calls them bugs. This bothers me, to tell you guys the truth. I've always seen them as more reptilian, but I'm letting my mind be a little less black and white, and I'm saying that this species has absorbed so many different life forms that they are reptile, they are insect, they are crustacean, you can say that as well. And they are mammal, because the termagant, it does give birth to live babies, right? Well, maybe not too much mammal, because if they had the mammal part of the brain, then they probably wouldn't. They'd probably feel bad about what they were doing, right? But me personally, I've always thought of the Tyranids as being a hive mind reptile race. So, combination of reptile and insect. But not fully insect. That just bothers me. But here is the biovore. The biovore was a lot easier to clean up, mainly because it was out of pewter. I actually bought 2 of these guys, because back when we played with the biovore, you would shoot the biovore a specific range, and then you would roll a dice to show a d6, 1 through 6 inches, right? But also a dice that would give you an arrow that randomly points in whatever direction to show that the spore mine was shot in the air, but it's light enough to drift. So you roll those 2 dice, and let's say you roll a 3 and the arrow points to the top right. You have to move it from the point where you said you were shooting it in the direction of the arrow by 3 inches, and that's where it actually floated down and landed. That way you wouldn't be able to just drop these spores directly on tanks. You would have to shoot it up into the air and hope that it floats down and hits your target. So what I did is I bought 2 of them, and I shot both of them at the same targets, and I would try to cluster things. So if my Norwegian friend had his Terminators next to his tank, I would shoot somewhere in between them both, and hope that the spore mines drift on either one of the units. Because when the spore mines blew up back then, it was a template. You didn't just hit the entire unit. It would blow up in that area once something touches it, so you might hit the tank. You might only hit 1 Terminator under that template. But I think I did a better job on painting this guy. Yes, it was pewter. I need to do a better job at the faces. My eyes are not the best anymore. I did get this wonderful light and magnifying glass from Christina, though. The Tyranid codex is from my parents. But yeah, having more than 1 biovore in 10th edition doesn't really make sense. But pumping spore mines and just littering the battlefield with these spore mines, sometimes they would just go completely haywire, 6 inches in the opposite direction, and they would land somewhere in a ruin, right? And there would be a spore mine. But my Norwegian friend, he would have to go around them. I don't think he ever thought about shooting at them. I don't know if that was even something you were allowed to do. They detonated when you got too close to him. I don't have any memories of him ever shooting at my spore mines. But we also had cooler rules back then where you couldn't just shoot past units to other units that were within range. Like the main reason I used my termagants was to screen damage from my gene stealers. So I would have my termagants moving and shooting and getting picked off, but they were protecting line of sight to my gene stealers. So once my termagants all died, my gene stealers would go into close combat. But it isn't that way anymore in 10th edition. In 2nd edition, the some units were dedicated monsters like the hive tyrant, the carnifex, the lictor, the tyranid warriors. So you couldn't screen against these guys. The termagants wouldn't block line of sight because these guys are bigger. So if I had the hormagaunts or the termagants or the gene stealers in front of my tyranid warriors, if it's within range, my opponent would still be able to shoot the warriors because they're towering over. But that was the main reason why I used termagants, because they would shoot and they would get picked off way before they got into close combat, but they would screen for my gene stealers, and that's not something you can do now anymore. Now you can just completely ignore the hormagaunts, the termagants, and you can shoot straight at the gene stealers or any of the monsters, which that still makes sense to me, but I don't understand. I guess it's just making the rules easier for everyone. But, like, you can't shoot through a squad at the squad behind it. It's kind of goofy to me. But it's to make the rules easier for people to understand, so there's no, like, guesswork. But then also there's part of me, the whole guesswork thing is what made it so much fun. Like, we drank Mountain Dew, we ate Chips Ahoy, and it was always Tyranids versus Space Wolves, and we always had fun. And I'm pretty sure he made up rules. I made up rules. We had fun. That was what mattered. So one of the last boxes that I wanted to show off was around this time I was also really into Epic 40,000, which if you guys don't know about it, it was everything shrunk to a really, really small scale. So Land Raiders were about this big, just to put it into perspective. It was a whole lot of fun. The rules were a lot easier for Epic 40,000 back then. And yeah, what can I say? The battles just felt more epic. Now, I can't show off any of my Epic figures. They're all outdated anyways, right? But most of my Tyranids, they're still on sprues. So just to put it into perspective, like, these are the hormagaunts on the top, the termagants in the middle. We have gargoyles actually in the middle. We have Tyranid warriors, we have a lictor, and we have gene stealers, which is pretty funny because I'm pretty sure back then, like, you had 3 Tyranid warriors on your little bar, and it didn't matter if they were melee or guns, because this sprue has 1 with bone swords and 2 with death spitters on it. The reason why I brought it up is because I did travel back to Germany every Christmas. And this was pre-internet, so you couldn't look on the internet and see what you would order. It would only be what was physically in the store, and back then, only the Games Workshop store sold it. The comic book stores did not sell the Warhammer 40,000 things. So only the Games Workshop store, but every Christmas we flew back to Germany, and one of the Christmases we drove to Köln, and we went to the Warhammer store there, which just blew my mind. It was amazing. It was like on the 4th level of a shopping mall, and the store was so massive. It had like one of every single figure that was out back then. It was a dream come true. But I wanted to show you guys these 2 metal figures that I ended up picking up in Germany. These I got more or less for Christmas. We have the Epic 40,000 version of the Hero Duel, and we have the Epic 40,000 version of the Heirophant. So let me let these 2 guys spin around on the turntable for a little bit. As you can see, I started painting the Hero Duel. I didn't finish it. It was around the same exact time. It's kind of sad for me. Like, I only had one friend that played this game with me, and when he moved away, I didn't have anyone to play with. Plus, like, high school happened, I switched to a new high school, girlfriends, everything, everything was new, driving a car, and after I dropped this, I never picked it back up. So these figures just ended up staying unpainted. Like, the Heirophant, as you can see, like, I glued it together, but I didn't even prime it. Like, this guy is pewter with no primer. The Hierophant here looks pretty cool, right? So let me start wrapping up the video. What I'll leave on is what I most recently bought for 10th edition, and a little bit of a teaser on what episodes I'm thinking about releasing soon. So like I said, last year, at the end of the year, I did my second residency for my master's program, so I'm almost done. But I met someone really awesome when we went to the Warhammer store, and I decided to pick this guy up, the Lictor, for 10th edition. I picked this one up because I honestly, like, there were so many to choose from, Death Leaper and stuff. I didn't know which one were good, and the only one that I really recognized was the Lictor, so I decided to get this one and try my hand at painting again. Which, please be kind, like, I'm still trying to learn, like, what color scheme I like and what works and what doesn't work. So the Lictor here, I do really enjoy the revamped model. Like, this guy looks really, really cool. And surprisingly, when I took it out of the box and I found all of the sprues, this guy comes in so many different pieces. So I think it's pretty cool that you can choose different poses and you follow the instructions to glue them in the way that you want your Lictor to look. I believe off the top of my head, there were 3 different choices on how to glue this guy together in different poses to make him look different. If you decide to buy multiple Lictor units, they're not all identical. But yeah, I used the same color scheme that I mentioned earlier in the video. Green on bluish green with a mint dry brush. Brown for the sharp bits, which now I'm noticing I kind of did it backwards. Bummer. And then the dry brush, of course, to make the brown look a little bit more vibrant. The only thing that I saw that I would consider soft bits on the Lictor would be his mouth tendrils, so that's why I made the mouth a yellowish color. One thing that I think is pretty cool about the 10th edition Lictor, and what is actually kind of cool about other figures, is that because there's multiple different poses, there's going to be bits and pieces that are different, which give you like extra pieces. So as you can see, there's extra set of Lictor legs, there's an extra set of Lictor rending arms, there's a whole bunch of little nubbies with claws and stuff, and most importantly, there's a different Lictor head right here. So with arms, with legs, with a head, that means we would need an extra chest piece, we would need extra tail piece, and we would need the scythe and a base. But that is a teaser for a future episode, so we can actually try and use the boxes that we're getting from the legitimate Warhammer 40,000. We can use them to their maximum. And of course, this is a brand new unit. I learned a little bit about what the meta is for 10th edition, and this is a new unit to me, the Carnifex with the rupture cannon. This guy is an anti-heavy infantry, anti-vehicle, anti-monster gun. It is awesome. I'm going to do an episode dedicated to this guy. I'm going to build it, I'm going to magnetize it, and I'm going to paint it for you guys in a dedicated episode, because this guy was fairly expensive. And as for sprues, so those are not my only 10th edition units that I've gotten so far. I found out that the Leviathan box is completely sold out. Of course, if I find it, it's going to be like triple the price, right? But all of those sprues from inside of the Leviathan box have found themselves to eBay. So I went ahead and I bought some of the cheaper ones, way cheaper than if you got them as singular units. The Winged Hive Tyrant. I have an episode where I'm going to modify this guy because I'm not really happy with the pose that he's in. I have an entire episode dedicated to the Winged Flying Tyrant. So he's like a Tyranid warrior with wings. What's cool about this guy is the entire figure Shows up on 1 sprue. I also went ahead and I found a really great deal on termagants with flesh borers. These guys, I got 20 of them for $28 on eBay, which is crazy because if you buy the termagant box, you get 10 of them for $40. One thing that I'm going to do with this guy, I already told you I'm going to show you how I'm going to modify, or actually the winged tyranid prime is what it's called. Confusing to me, but I don't like the pose he's in. I'm going to repose him. I'll make an episode for that. The episode on the termagants with the flesh borers. These guys, their only weapon choice that we have is flesh borers. I dug through my Tyranid box, that attack swarm box that I got back in high school, and we have a bunch of alternate sprues for the termagants, but for 3rd edition. So we have the spine fists, which look pretty cool. You can shoot into close combat with them, and we have devourers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another episode where I'm going to put together the termagants that I got from eBay, but I'm also going to magnetize them with weapon choices. So they'll have flesh borers, they'll have devourers, and they'll have spine fists as magnetized. So that's a guaranteed 3 episodes: the winged Tyranid Prime, the termagants, and the carnifex. Other than that, if you've made it this far, please consider subscribing. I'm going to have more content coming out. Plus, I'm going to have Minecraft Mondays at 10 a.m. We have Warhammer Wednesdays at 10 a.m. And we have Funko Fridays at 10 a.m. And the new league for Path of Exile starts at the end of this week. So I'm going to drop those every single time I complete a challenge and can edit it. And on a final note, thank you so much for joining me. And I have spent a ridiculous amount of money on Citadel paints already.
Thank you so much for joining me today. Smash like to show your appreciation, and consider leaving a boom in the comments section below. Also, click on my dude here to subscribe for more Let's Plays. Ooh.